Please subscribe to help you and your motorcycle perform better.
Well, good morning everyone. Everybody that knows exactly what this is. So we are going to get a tutorial from Mike to go through the dash to look at the settings. So Mike, over to you.
I'm going to start by turning the display on by holding down the information button.
That is with the key on, the power off.
Power off.
Okay, so here's our display.
Then we're going to select the library of functions right here.
Yep.
We're going to move with these choice buttons, settings.
The settings.
Going to select.
Yep.
We see ride customization as the second choice. We select. We
Okay.
go to ride modes. We select. And we move down beyond the standard ride modes that are offered to customizable modes. You'll see we have one called Custom A already selected. We can move to edit by moving to the right with this selection button and then say copy from another mode. I'm selecting yes. And when I get to the next screen, I get to choose which mode I'm copying from. I'm going to choose sport mode. So I select that. Now I have all kinds of choices, including engine map, engine braking, throttle response, traction control, anti-lock braking, and the second to last is suspension damping. I'm selecting that, and I can choose all of the different modes. Which would you like to start with?
So let's go to off-road soft.
Or off-road, okay. Off-road soft is second to last. Select that.
And now for the showroom series, we're going to actually bounce the bike and move through the settings. So Mike, over to you.
Okay.
Now remember, in this instance, the ignition is off. So that's not a problem. So off-road soft. So now let's turn the ignition on and start the bike. Now we need to determine, does the motor need to be on? Next mode is comfort, and let's see what the ECU gives us. Selected. All right, Mike, let's see what comfort gives us. Now that was much like the paraleather and teleleather setup of just that bounce over the top, so profoundly different to soft off-road. Now let's see if we get a difference with balance. Now again, on balance, we don't know what this is. We're going to discover it, so let's see. So balance gives us exactly the same sensation and feeling plus visual as comfort. Now we'll select sport. Let's see what we get in sport. So from those perspectives, just showroom settings, it seems that comfort and sport are very similar. That doesn't mean because it's ECU driven that when we go ride the bike, we're going to find something completely and utterly different. This is just a bounce test, and to test it, the motor must be running. But there's what we've got to get into the menu, look at the settings, and see initially as an impression, what do we have? Exercise the bike, hit the key, turn it on. The rear will drop, and then the front drops. Cool. All right, test ride number one is with the bike as any person would ride it that signed up for the demo ride today. That is rain mode. Significant power lag, which you'd expect because you're in the rain, but outside of that, the purpose of that is to feel the bike, right? And it's known for being and having plush suspension. And at this point, as you roll the power on, you can feel the back sink, which takes weight off the front, and the front starts to tap a little bit, geometry wise, and certainly as you get to use the horsepower the engine's got, right at 150. As that acceleration rolls in, front doesn't get light, but certainly you can feel the weight transfer front to back. Next test ride, we're going to go ahead and put it into street. So we'll press the mode button one time, and then we'll get that icon of a road approaching. Now that tells us it's street mode, and we're going to go ahead and try this next. All right, so we just finished the street mode. Way better power. Much better than rain, but of course rain, you need it to be forgiving. You don't want the rear to spin up on you and scare you. So very user-friendly on the street mode, very user-friendly. The part I like there is the throttle's not one-to-one, there's a slight delay, but specifically as you turn the throttle, you can feel the power. You're not waiting like rain where there's a lag. So that's the wonderful part of that, about that. Suspension-wise, the ride quality, still very fluffy, soft, comfortable, plush in the back, which you'd expect. I mean, you're in street mode and you want that level of comfort. The front actually seemed a little bit firmer. Kind of want some validation about that. Not going to get that today because I'll need a test bike to be able to do that. To put a cable tie on it and just ride the route to see if that does hold true with the amount of travel used. Still too soft in the back, not enough weight on the front. Specifically under 50%, 60% throttle, you can definitely feel the front tapping. And in terms of going through a corner, little nerve-wracking on corner entry and mid-corner, but rideable. I think at this point I would probably lower the front 3 millimeters because the ground clearance isn't an issue at all for what we're doing, just to negate that soft back. So we'll see what we get out of the next run with Sport. Okay, done with Sport. Yeah, baby. Now that was fun. Great engine response. Power's right there, accelerates, comes right up through the rev range, no problems at all. Much better response from the rear shock. Firmed up dramatically and made the acceleration and the chassis balance much more confidence inspiring, I felt, for me, because you could roll into it and the shock would, with the active suspension, feel like as the throttle and the power came on that the suspension firmed itself up slightly so it didn't continue to just drop down. So in that regard, that portion of it was fantastic. Huge improvement. The front hardened up again. We don't have adjustable preload. We obviously, with electronic suspension, we can't adjust anything. And so for me on the front, it was definitely way too hard. And the tapping got not more violent, but more pronounced in the input through the bars. So that geometry change, thinking about that for the street setting, would be mandatory for the sport setting. So next up is to create a custom map. All right, based on the custom ride, one of the things you wonder is whether you're sensitive enough to feel things, especially with the delay. You just have no anticipation of what that delay is going to be. So my personal thought there was, let's see. Turns out you can definitely feel the delay. And I mean, it's probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second. After a bump, there's another action. So the bike itself doesn't really settle. The front was dramatically worse. That is an absolute no-go on the delay for the settings with a stock front. The engine power at max, oh yeah, that'll get your attention. And it's 140 has always been my benchmark of perfect power, just because it gives you enough to give you a grin. So max power was absolutely brilliant. Engine braking -1, could have a little more, could have a -2, because at that point I can glide into the corner, I can control my engine much better than having the abruptness of standard engine braking, where you're not going to get your groin area smashed into the tank, but you're certainly going to feel yourself move into that area and have pressure on your groin in the tank, or clamp like hell with your knees. So I would not use the delay personally, but that's me. It's just, as one of the boys here laughed about, it's my level of sensitivity. But it's my bike riding my way. That's what I want out of it. So I think I would stay with the custom map. I would definitely cross sport over. I'd go through the changes I made, but I would keep it on auto. The only question I have on auto is, does the bike on auto, when you enter the corner, actually let the forks compress to steer? Or does auto mean that the bike is constantly trying to keep itself flat? So that's an engineer question based on coding and what the design parameters were. So I'm going to pitch that question to Harley and see what we come back with. The other question I've also sent out is, with active suspension, how many decisions a second is being made by the computer? And we'll hopefully get that information today before I finish the testing here. Overall observation. For me, ergonomically, handlebars too wide, but that's me. The next thing is, with the stock brake position, I'm nowhere near that, and the bar with gloves on will hit my knuckles. So obviously the lever itself has to go further out for me. We have an adjuster, not a problem at all. The angle of the lever is too high, and that is one compact unit here built together, so that's not going to be an issue in dropping it down. Overall, braking feel and response, actually pretty nice. Soft, spongy, slightly, but you can feel the brakes working. So in regards to that, when braking, you can see I got down basically most of the time to there, and a couple times got to here. So overall for braking, we don't know where mechanical bottom is up from the bottom, but overall that makes an interesting question. Where is maximum travel? And if it is at the bottom, then we know, based on my concerns about the front being too firm, that's validated. On the other side of the bike, clutch lever, super, fully adjustable. We've got our little dial here so we can set it where we want it. All of the controls are great on the left, but the activation for the turn signals is a little awkward to get to. You've got to slide your hand under to get it. Not a biggie at all, but once the lever gets dropped a little bit, that will make it easier for your thumb to come across. Overall, for the cockpit, fairly easy. Shifter, well, given my foot size, which is a size 9 US, this gap is literally perfect. I can put exactly what I want out of my foot. The gearbox is clunky, but this bike isn't supposed to have a sport bike transmission, and the throw is very, very short, which makes it really precise when you want to shift. The other piece of the puzzle for me is the rear brake. The nice part about the rear brake is it's well below your foot. If this was adjustable that way, in that this had a slot so you could adjust to your shoe size, that'd be great. And then obviously the same will be true of the shifter, in that you could move it to set your foot. That's fine. Now with a 30-inch inseam, I feel that this is a little on the tight side for me. My knee is not up by my ears by any stretch of the imagination, but a little lower on the foot peg would be nice. And as you can see, there's zero option for that at all here. So not a biggie. Might be interesting over a long ride to see if that is going to affect me or not. The bars are a little narrower. I think most people might appreciate that because they don't all have big wide shoulders, and not everybody works with their hands these days. Maybe 2 inches shorter on the overall width of the bar from end of the grip to end of the grip. The angle of the bar is very comfortable because it's a very long reach from the tank to the bars. Depending on what you think of when you sit on the bike, put your knuckles against the grip and hold the grip. Those are the only two positions really. and then you can radius the bar backwards towards you to get what you need. There's plenty of clearance to the tank, so that's not an issue at all. Overall, jump on it, ride it, comfortable, easy, very user-friendly, very plush to ride. But if you're going to pick the speed up a little bit, I'd want to do some more testing, geometry work on the front, or find out if there was a way to firm up the shock at all, which probably there isn't. And in that case as well, also find out mechanical bottom for the forks. We've got a little bit more work to do, a little more in depth, but overall, a very welcoming motorcycle, very welcoming. And when you ratchet the power up and take the engine braking away, much more user-friendly, I think, so that you're not disturbed by the engine braking. Key question, would I own one? I'd like to own one for a month and get to know it, and based on that experience, for both dirt and road, see if at that point in time I could get this bike to do what I want. And maybe that would include changes to the shock spring, some other things. But no bike is perfect. Everything is a compromise, and based on that compromise, you work with what you've got. And overall, realistically, honestly, the only question for me is replace the bar. That's easy. Do some figuring out on the rear shock, because to me, it's not an Achilles heel, but it's definitely something I need to address. All in all, it is no wonder why this bike has sold so many iterations and everybody loves it. Apparently, the manual suspension version is very hard to find. They only made a few of them. So I'm in search of a herd of unicorns, of which there's probably just a handful. And hopefully in the Bay Area, I'll find one. And when I do, I'll report back on that. So for now, I got more knowledge to acquire on the Pan America. This will be a fun journey.
Dave Moss can tune your suspension no matter where you are on the planet via his remote tuning service. Contact Dave on Facebook or by email, dave@davemosstuning.com.